Welcome to FCC Supporter Square, the show for fans, by fans, and about fans. Here's your host, Mark Suffin and Matt Warman.
Hey everybody, it is Thursday. It's yet another time for FCC Supporter Square. I am your host, Matt Warman, and I do have a guest. I know last week I had a plethora of guests, a gaggle of guests, a group of guests. I'm not sure what you call the fifth line and vanguard, other than maybe guests. But it was nuts. It's going to be a little less nuts, but my good friend Kyle is here, and he's going to make things just as nutty, I think. How you doing, Kyle?
Doing great. Glad we were finally able to kind of get it. I know we've been trying to do this for like a month or two, and finally glad we were actually able to nail down a date.
It happens, right? This is one of the things that I say on this show, and people who listen to this show, I say life gets in the way. Life always gets in the way, whether it's work or kids or swim or school or whatever it is. Broken down car, all kinds of things happen. Life happens. It's okay. This is a podcast. This is not a mission critical function. This is not crowd strike or anything like that. This is just a fun half hour for people to listen to while they mow the lawn. That's really what we're trying to do here, is make sure people are happy while they mow the lawn.
Love it.
So, weird week because we had a game on a Tuesday. Last week we had a game on a Monday. So I think we've had games every day of the week now as an MLS team. It's kind of strange. It was Leagues Cup. First, what were your thoughts on Leagues Cup going in, and then what was your thoughts on the game Tuesday night?
So Leagues Cup as a whole, it's one of those things. Obviously, put MLS is putting a lot of emphasis on it. It's kind of their baby. I know there's a lot of disdain for Leagues Cup, especially with the way that MLS kind of treated U.S. Open Cup. So, like, it's one of those things. Like, I'm not really for or against it. I opted out of my season tickets. That was predominantly because I was going to be out of the country for a lot of the beginning of it. But it's one of those things that it's still a trophy. And I think if you ask the players, like, they want to win whatever they can, right? So it was one of those things kind of going in that it's double-sided sword because obviously our form wasn't great leading up to Leagues Cup, but I think you were kind of hoping we had a little bit of an easier draw with our first Liga MX team. We kind of came out. I wasn't able to watch the match because I was out of the country, but it sounded like we had a ton of chances. We kind of put our foot to the metal or pedal to the metal, if you will. And it sounded like maybe that was like a little springboard. Then we, went out against New York City. Didn't really play. We played well for the first maybe 10 minutes. Fell flat, fell behind, and then had the 10 minutes of our lives there at the end. So it's kind of one of those things I was hoping maybe that would maybe bring some continuity to the team, maybe get some confidence going into the last third, last fourth of the season. So I think that's really kind of what I was looking at Leagues Cup as a way to not impact our standings as far as the Shield or playoffs are considered, but kind of like looks like a preseason, kind of like mid-season preseason. So it was like one of those things that as we continued, I mean, I would have loved to see us move on, but I really wasn't that heartbroken to also see us kind of just fizzle out. That way, Acosta can hopefully like fully recover. We can get maybe some training with some of our new pieces, kind of get them all together. And I think just maybe give some tired legs a little bit of rest before we obviously have Miami and Columbus both coming up here pretty early in the restart. So it sucks. I never want to lose, but it wasn't. I didn't lose any sleep over it.
I'm with you 100%. If the guys are playing, I kind of want to see it. I am going to be out of the country for the first week of September, so I'll be back by hell is real. But kind of in the same boat. I did opt in, and I was like, my wife and I gone to the games, and we're having an okay time. It's really hard to get fully invested on a Monday or Tuesday. because for me, I work from home on Tuesdays and Fridays, so that's for me is going downtown when I wasn't going to go downtown. That's where I work, and then having to go down early the next morning. It's just not. It's not the same kind of pregame. It's not the same kind of vibe. A Tuesday vibe is not the same as a Friday or a Saturday vibe,
Yeah.
where you have time to really kind of gear up both mentally and physically and really get excited and get into the game. So you don't get into the game. It is a Leagues Cup. Um, I understand the money grab aspect of it. I also understand that we're getting players. How many people would lose their mind if Lucho Costa turned an ankle at the Richmond Kickers pitch because it was a piece of junk, right? People would lose their friggin' minds, and that's a possibility. And if their facilities are better and they want to host, that's fine. I think the smaller clubs, it's more fun that the smaller clubs host if they do that. Also, Apple is obviously it's with MLS, so they're showing all of those on Apple TV. They have complete control on who and what and why and the production and all that. So it all makes complete sense. But if you are a fan of this club, you are a fan of the U.S. Open Cup because those two are intertwined forever.
Yeah. Ever.
Maybe 10 years from now, when the fans are all just MLS and they don't remember it, I could see that happening. I could see that's where they're going. But yeah, I think it's the same thing. I think they didn't heavily as rotate as much as I thought they would. I thought they would treat this as purely preseason to try to get some people meshing with our injuries. It was good that Lucho missed 2.5 games of this little run. He needs to rest. We do not want one-legged Lucho in November or December. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So that being said, I'm like you. It's like, meh, I was not sad. I actually left a little early. When that fourth goal went in, I left a little early because hey, it's a school night and it doesn't. Unlike the day where I saw them score 4 goals, there wasn't anybody that they were going to bring off the bench that was going to score 2 goals in less than 10 minutes. It's possible, and because it was possible, traffic was easy.
Right.
People stayed. But sometimes you have to. Sometimes life gets in the way, and that result was not going to change how I felt about things. If it was hell is real, I'd probably be a different kettle of fish, obviously.
Yes. Yes.
But I think we'd all be more invested. So, did you watch the game? Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesday. So we ended up finding like insane pitch view tickets for $80 a pop. So I was like, free food and drink, like, sure, I'll do that. So we ended up buying last minute pitch view and we ended up going down the game. And it was actually really funny because when we went down 2-0, I actually like went on the Norden Discord and I posted, I'm like, just like the Red Bulls, we have them exactly where we want them. And then, of course, so, we come back, Buka puts one in, Yedlin puts one in, and I turned to my wife and I was like, see, told you. And but then, then all hell broke loose. So that was my only disappointment with the game was how it ended. Again, I wasn't bummed that we lost per se, but I think for the fan base, like I mean, we're so driven right now. We're so passionate right now. Like everybody wants that cup. Everybody wants that shield. And I think it is a little bit disheartening to have those last 3 games leading up into the League's Cup and then, have the miraculous 10 minutes that we had in versus NYSCFC. And then this one kind of feels like a little bit of a letdown and kind of makes I completely see why people are like, oh no, what's going on? We have our replacement for Miazga who's been playing, I think pretty solidly. I mean, he had the one, own goal or not an own goal, but the giveaway that led to a goal. But outside of that, I think he's looked pretty solid. So I think that was kind of a shock to myself of like, wait a minute, I thought we had a replacement. I thought, really we were playing our full back three with Murphy. I forget how to pronounce his name. Nazium. Awazium, yes. And then Robinson. So I was like, well, wait a minute. Now, obviously, we did have Baird on one of the wing sides, but I wouldn't think that would make that much difference, especially with Yedlin on the other side. So that's the only thing that concerned me a little bit. Was like I'm a little bit leery of going back into play because I'm like, well, wait a minute, this was supposed to be our, this is what's going to carry us in. But again, we didn't play Lucho until the second half, and I fully agree with you. I think we live and die by Lucho. When teams know they don't have to account for him, they can put two guys on Luca. They can, do everything they want to Yedlin. The second Kubo touches the ball, he's got 3 or 4 guys on him. So without having that threat of Lucho of like not, having no idea what he's going to do because he can do anything at any given time, I think, that's a massive hole that hopefully this little bit of rest will allow him to become back to 100%, and then we can just pick up where we left off before our little skid where we beat Miami. What was it, 6-1?
Yes, absolutely. And we have Miami away. We have Montreal, I think,
Montreal
when we come
home.
back at
Yeah.
home. Then we have Hellas Real at home, and then we have LAFC later in September. That's just a brutal. That is a murderer's row.
It is.
Uh, we did sign somebody today. I
Mhm.
try to move a little bit into today's news. We signed a person who played. I think it was Giacchino, I think is his last name, as a temporary striker.
Mhm.
The social media was losing their minds about what we signed and how we signed. I kind of disagree with some of the takes. I understand your takes, but this is not the Cincinnati Reds. They're not trying to save money. I think they're trying to set themselves up for next year because
Yes.
remember, we know we were going to sell Brenner, and I think they probably had somebody lined up, and that didn't work out. So they ended up having to sign Pupenza, who has bona fides, but also had some baggage.
Yeah.
The last team said when we got him was, you can have him. We don't want him. You can have him. And we're like, thank you, we will. And he looked great for a few matches, and then slid off, and then brought some baggage, and we are where we are. So we don't want to sign another guy because we promised with Weston McKinney, and we didn't deliver. So we have to bring in the next biggest guy. We've got Trilla. He's gonna be the striker of the future, or at least the next few years. He's the MVP of the All Star game. He's got the Golden Boot. He's all that in a bag of chips. Now it is MLS 2 and not MLS. It's going to take a little bit of time, but and you could say, well, what about Kevin Kelsey? What about Santos? What about Kubo? Because we've been playing him up there. It
Mhm.
sounds like we have a bunch of strikers, and as you said, and I think that happened all tournament. Our offense didn't fail to score because they couldn't create chances. They created chances. They hit the
Mhm.
post like 3 or 4 times. They made an extra pass when they should have just shot the ball. If Santos tried to lay a nice pass to Kubo to tap in, and Kubo didn't make the run. Is that Noonan's fault? Is that the Santos' fault? No, they were making chances. It's not like they weren't breaking the team down and having their own shots. And some of them were half chances, sure, but we were in position to score, and we probably should have scored a couple of times in that first half. Now they probably should have scored too, but it was very evenly matched. You can't say, well, if we had Hani Mukhtar or whoever you wanted to say, you insert your striker of choice here, we would have won that game because I don't see adding a striker making that better than what we had out there because they had chances, they just didn't do it.
Yeah,
But
and I think that's a really good point too, because like even throughout the match, even when we were down 2-0, I never felt out of it. Like because again we were creating chances. We had just put in Lucho, and we weren't out of it. Like very clearly, we were able to come back, storm back, get our 2 goals, and then for whatever reason, something mental just flicked off for 5 seconds, and then we're down one. And then all of a sudden, the guys, and I think this has always been kind of a problem for us. It hasn't been so much, not necessarily this year, but definitely leading up to last year. Like one big thing we always had was the second we gave up a goal, our guys had their head down and they're kind of like looking at each other like, what just happened? And then, the play restarts and all of a sudden they're like kind of still trying to figure out what happened on the last one. And all of a sudden the ball's back in the back of our net again. So I think I don't know. I'm trying not to look too much into it. And as far as like the signings, like Gio, I think is going to be honestly, he's great for what we need, right? The other thing I think we have to remember too is I'm sure Albright. It was not in the plans to have to replace your anchor, right? It's not like as much as I love Nick Hagelin, like he's been a phenomenal utility defenseman for us, right? But he's not the anchor. Like he goes down with an injury, you can kind of not write him off, but it's not as crucial to replace that piece. Miazga going down, you have to replace that piece. We don't have another anchor that can vocally communicate the way Matt does. Like, take control of that back line the way that Matt does. And so what Albright had probably been working on for a month or two, all of a sudden now he had to completely change course and be like, wait a minute, I have to go find, a defensive anchor. So he has to put time into that. And then that may have swayed. And again, I don't know. I don't talk to Albright. I don't have any information. This is all just my personal take on it. But it's one of those things that I think that may have thrown a wrench in the gears because all of a sudden they had to go look for a position that they wasn't even on their radar. And then by the time they got back to maybe looking at the piece that they wanted, it was either too late or maybe prices went up higher than they expected. And honestly, we also have to remember MLS isn't the Premier League. MLS isn't Bundesliga. MLS, as much as we love it, as much as like we love Cincinnati, this isn't necessarily like a lot of players aren't like, oh, MLS is my dream. So like some of these like Weston McKennie obviously is like the name that got thrown around a lot. Josh Sargent, like these guys, like no offense to Cincinnati, like I love being from Cincinnati. Like there's nothing I love more than this city. But like I can see, a player of that caliber isn't necessarily gonna just for his minimum ask for a contract isn't gonna be willing to just relocate to Cincinnati, in my opinion. So I feel like there were some unrealistic expectations within the transfer window. But again, like I get it. Like people want to win. It's the way Albright and Noonan have changed this team. They've ingrained that mindset of, oh no, we're good now. It's not they think they originally said 5 years, and then all of a sudden within one we're winning the Shield. So I completely I don't fault anybody. I'm not like angry at anybody's takes. Like everybody and I think that's kind of the weird thing about the fandom is it seems like people just get kind of angry at each other for having different opinions, and I'm like, no, that's completely cool. Like I don't necessarily I may not agree with you, but you're more than welcome to have that take and awesome. Like if you have that ambition and that's what you're expecting, like Weston McKennie, how amazing would that have been if all of a sudden yesterday they were like, oh, or this morning at 9 a.m. they're like, oh, by the way, Weston's here. Like just nonchalantly, like that'd have been amazing.
Yeah.
So it's like always had those ambitions, but I'm not like getting my hopes or I'm not personally setting my my happiness with the club based upon a superstar signing. As of now, I go on record saying this. As of now, I don't have any distrust in Noonan, or sorry, not Noonan, Albright, or either of them, but really Albright. I mean, really, the only swing and a miss that he's kind of really had is Ben Boop, and I don't really put that on Albright all that much because we saw the pockets of brilliance that Boop had. Unfortunately, once he got comfortable in the city of Cincinnati, he just kind of seemed to phone it in and was a little bit more kind of focused on his lifestyle than playing for the club. And while I don't know. Like I don't know what test you do like to know that's going to happen. And I think if it would have worked out, like if Boop, him scoring that very first match versus Nashville, and granted, like they were down 2 men and we were already up, but like the way the Boop there it is just organically happened, and I think if it would have taken off, like we'd be building a statue for that guy if he was scoring 20 goals a year. But unfortunately, like I think he could have, but unfortunately he wasn't willing to to put the work in. And in a blue collar town like Cincinnati, like the fans are gonna turn on you very quickly. So it's one of those things. Like as far as signings, like I think we did what we could. I don't feel like I feel like we are slightly better, or at the very least, at the exact same spot we were at that Miami game, or we're really at that San Jose game before we lost Miazga. I feel like it's going to take maybe a little bit of time to gel. But that's the nice thing about Gio is he's coming from playing for St. Louis last year, so he's fully familiar with the travel. He's fully familiar with the physicality of the league, and put up 10 goals in his campaign last year. So he can score. So I mean, if we can get 5 goals out of him here in the last quarter, a couple in the playoffs, and honestly, if he opens up space for Acosta, I mean, that's all we need is we need someone to be able to pull defenders away from Acosta and Luka and allow them to use their feet and do their magic. And then who knows? So yeah, I think they did. I think that they did the best that they could with what they had, even though it wasn't the spotlight signing.
I think so. One real quick before we move on to why you're here. It's you said that Miazga going down. Remember, he was the MLS Defender of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
He is the vocal leader of the defense. He is the Lucho Acosta of our defense. When he's there, we gave up 2-3 goals. It's exposed something else that I want your quick take on. This is my hot take. I'm putting it out before I say it. It is my hot take. Is that Celentano is not nearly as good. I did not think he played very well. Certainly there were some shots, and the shots were some bangers maybe, but he was crutched by Miazga, and since Miazga is gone, the defense, not only is the defense a little not as good, I don't think Celentano is as good. I think it's exposing some of the things that we thought, he's a U.S. men's keeper for 2026. He's not playing like that now. What's your thought on that?
I actually think that's a really good point. And I think you're right. I think it's twofold. I think one, the communication from Matt is second to none. So like our seats are on the second, like we're the second row in the First Financial, our season tickets, and on E2. So we're basically the far end towards the Bailey of First Financial, and like we're right there behind the boards. And you can hear from our seats how much Matt would scream, yell. Like if they're playing a long ball over top, Matt's sitting there watching it and directing Celentano and even the other defensemen who's got it, what angles to take, all of this. And I think right now, without Matt being there, you don't have. I don't know if Murphy may not have the situational awareness yet to be able to do that. And same with Miles. Like I don't know if Miles is comfortable enough. I mean, he's only been here this year. So wherever we're at, 20 some games. I don't know if he has that awareness and that relationship with Celentano yet, that when they, maybe Celentano doesn't trust them yet because he doesn't, there just could be a lot of factors there. But I think that's one big piece that we're missing is that communication from Matt. He was telling exactly, okay, he's like, Roman, come get this. Roman, stay back. There was that. And then, so now I think it's twofold of the communication, but I also think the 3 defenders aren't used to maybe one another yet. So whereas Matt could cover for mistakes for Murphy, could cover for mistakes for Hagelin. So now Miles isn't necessarily that versed at doing that yet. So when a mistake's made, Miazga would clean it up a lot of times, whereas now it's just directly going to Roman. And, like you said, whether he's out of position, he's not ready. I don't necessarily think that he's doing anything wrong. I wouldn't say he's a bad keeper or downgrade or anything of this year. I just think that there's more chances being thrown his way that weren't immediately cleared out. And that is exposing a little bit of maybe some things he needs to work on.
I agree. So, I think that's where we're at on that. But I wanted to talk to you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time because you actually got me weirdly kind of interested in doing something like this because back in the USL days, I remember watching your video. It was like a 20-minute video of March to the pregame. I think you were Pride or DI. I'm not sure where you started
Yep.
from. But I remember that you came through because you guys have your own little stopping spot, and then you would pick us up at by Hangover Easy at the second stopping spot. Then we had a Corteo. I'm not even sure we had a Corteo when you were doing your first film, and then we march in and then go to the Bailey. So I was always interested and fascinated. You did a great job on that, and you know life gets in the way, and you move on to other things. It's hard to do that every game and try to figure out other things. But tell us about how you became an FCC fan and what you're doing now with it.
Yeah, so you guys like kind of the history of like soccer in general, like it was weird. I was thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask me this today, and it was one of those things like we went to as a kid. Excuse me, I got like a little bit of a head cold, so sorry, starting to catch up to me. But yeah, like as a kid, like I remember like going to like Silverbacks. I don't know if you remember like the indoor soccer downtown. We would go to Silverback games. I played save soccer. But I wouldn't call myself like a soccer like fan. I was a hockey guy. I grew up on the ice. Like I love this. Like that was my diehard sport. I would travel to Columbus to go to Blue Jackets games. That's still the team I follow for better or worse. So a lot of my time was devoted to hockey. So like I didn't really follow soccer all that much until after high school. And then after high school, I went to a crew game or two. A buddy of mine, we went up to, I think it was in 2005. I think the All Star game was up in Columbus. We went to that. They played Fulham. So that was kind of the first experience where I was like, oh, like this is really cool. Started kind of following the Columbus Crew a little bit after that. Started playing the FIFA games. Didn't know much about the Premier League, but I knew that was the league to most people. Found Everton because Tim Howard was the goalkeeper at that time. I knew him from the men's national team. Excuse me. So that kind of like led me to start following Everton. But even then, I was still kind of passive about it. Like I said, I maybe go to a crew game a year. Even back then, like it was different. Like you didn't have social media. You didn't really have like the internet was still kind of new in the early 2000s. So you didn't really have all this coverage. And even here in Cincinnati, like Fox Sports Ohio, they cover the crew games, but the Reds and Bearcats, basketball and football, superseded anything up in Columbus, right? So you couldn't really watch it unless the men's national team or women's national team were playing the Olympics. Really wasn't on TV. But then, like I said, high school or after high school and college, that's when I started kind of following it a little bit more. And then kind of passively. And then I heard the news from a coworker in 2015 about the rumblings of FC Cincinnati, and they released the price points. And I think like at that time, a Bailey season ticket was $50. And I remember coming home, telling my wife at the time, I was like, oh, I was like, this could be kind of fun. Like, I used to be like, I like soccer. This could be kind of fun. Why don't we buy a season ticket? She told me no. She's like, we're never going to use that. And it was funny because she was like, all right, but we can go to the first game. So we bought just single tickets to the very first game. However, we both ended up getting sick the Friday before that game. And it was like, what was it, like 40 degrees? I think it was raining. We're like, we're not going outside. So we ended up not even going to the match. But we had the tickets. And it wasn't until the following year that I actually made it to a match. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I told her, I was like, no, we had to buy some tickets. So that's when we ended up buying season tickets, was the 2017 season. And yeah, just been kind of diehard into it ever since. I know Marshall really well. Oddly enough, he was a high school teacher for my wife. So I was at a bar and kind of hanging out with him because he was part of the Pride at the time. I knew nothing about like really SG culture or anything like that. So just randomly kind of started talking to him because we had all had snag gear on. And it was funny because like he told me that he was my wife's high school teacher at one point, and I went home and I told my wife, I was like, yes, I just hung out with one of your teachers all night. And then him and I just blossomed a great friendship. Since then, we started, or he started Norden with the Pride. when it was Pride Norden. I was a founding member, but not anything on the board or anything like that. And then later in 2019, our first season as ASG, he asked me, would you have any interest in joining the Norden board? Jumped at the chance to be able to do that. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. Would have had no idea that this was going to lead to, the craziness that it has for my entire family, not just me, but now we're taking my daughter to matches, and my wife absolutely loves it. So it's just been a great kind of ride. But as far as like the sorry, I didn't actually really answer your question. But as far as like the YouTube stuff, so at the time, excuse me, man, I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
But at the time, yeah, so I was doing like action figure reviews. I'm a big collector, as you can kind of see. I have like all my FC Cincinnati cards up here and frames here. So yeah, so I've always been kind of like a big collector, and some friends of mine were doing like action figure reviews and toy hunts on YouTube, and I've always loved doing video editing. So back in the day, well, I still do it. I'd buy a GoPro, go on vacation, kind of film the whole vacation, set it to music. Like I love film editing, like kind of that whole process. So I was like, I could do this. Like let's see what I can do. And the next thing I knew, like my toy channel, like I had a couple thousand followers. Just kind of having fun with it. But then the pandemic hit, and throughout I guess I did the FC Cincinnati videos before the pandemic. But yeah, so like I just kind of ventured out. I was like, I wonder if you'd be interested in. I was putting shots of FC Cincinnati games in my toy reviews. So I would start my toy videos with like a shot of the march, or a shot from my seat, the goal going, something along with FC Cincinnati. Well, then I was like, I wonder if anyone would actually like to see a full video. So then probably the video you're referencing when we went out to Seattle, that was my first real one. So I filmed that whole trip. I filmed us in the airport, on the flight over. I actually found a toy store in Seattle on the pier that allowed me to film, show all the toys and comics and stuff that they had. So I incorporated toys into it, but yeah, so it was just kind of an outlet that since I was going to all the games, let's see if anyone was interested in it. And then I did the one for Atlanta the year of the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and obviously there wasn't really much to film. And then at the end of the pandemic, my wife and I found out we were pregnant, and we had our daughter. So it was like one of those things that like once everything kind of got back to normal, it just unfortunately kind of fizzled out. But I mean, I still like, people still watch them. Like I think I get probably about 1,000 views on the very first match for Portland a year. I think last time I looked, it was like almost like 40,000 views on that one. So it's been fun. Yeah.
Well, since you sadly stopped doing it, somebody had to take the gap. I guess I guess that was the impetus for me to go. You know what? I'm dumb enough and have enough free time to do this. Let's do this every week. So I know how it goes, right? Doing it once is great. But doing it week in and week out, it becomes, you have to be a little obsessive. I guess that's where I come in here. But that is so awesome. I see you all the time down at First Financial. You're always so kind and so nice, and your daughter is so cute. I'm so glad that you can bring her to games. It's nice. Are you training her to be a capo?
She's getting there. At the match on Tuesday night, we brought her, and she was like very, very vocal. She loves the Sha La La chant. So anytime that, like as soon as the second that the arms start going, she's immediately going with it. She loved, what's the other one? Oh, the like the OUC chant that they do. She loves that one. She'll just sit there and go, oh, oh. So she's getting into it a little bit, but it was really funny on Tuesday because she's almost 2, so now like she's starting to like communicate and like actually remember things. So it was really funny because anytime we scored especially the very first goal, she was up jumping on her chair. She turned around to the people behind us and was just like, yeah, and then like would not let them sit down and kept like trying. She like wanted them to cheer with her. So yeah, so I think she's got a little bit of it now, but I was never like, so I've never had season tickets in the Bailey. I do it about once a year. I'm for as much as I'm talking and as much as I don't mind being on like a camera, I'm very much an introvert. I'm very I'm not like, I'm kind of shy, to be honest. So it's one of those things that yeah, I never had any interest in being a capo, or like, and then don't get me wrong, like the amount of work that they put in, that's the other thing too, is I want to enjoy the match, and they're putting in a full hard day's work. We'll see where she ends up. I may be in the Bailey at some point with her, but that's probably a couple years down the road.
I would love to talk more, but sadly Zoom is running out of time and we are running out of time. Kyle, thank you so much for joining the FCC Supporter Square.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me. And honestly, like, this is one kind of passion thing for me, is people that are putting themselves out there and trying to make content for FC Cincinnati. Definitely try to support it as much we can, because I know how much work it is, and I know how unappreciated it can be sometimes. So this is awesome that you do it. Love it every week. So thank you so much for allowing me to have the time on.
Thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to FCC Supporter Square. Your hosts are Mark Shupin and Matt Warner. If you'd like to be a guest, please contact us at fcc.supp.square@gmail.com. The intro song was Living Inside My Brain by the Stone Buttons. The exit song was Awesome Sauce, also by the Stone Buttons. Thank you for listening.